Welcome to the PR Maven Podcast, a podcast all about growing your network and building your brand through traditional and digital networking techniques. I'm Nancy Marshall, the PR Maven and CEO of Marshall Communications. I've been strengthening brands through PR for over 35 years, and now I'm celebrating the success of executives, influencers, business owners, and entrepreneurs from all around the world, all of whom have cultivated their brands and broadened their networks through traditional and digital networking methods. Each week, I interview one of these interesting and influential individuals and provide an opportunity for you, the PR Maven Nation, to gain insights from their strategies and stories. So stay tuned for this week's episode, and thanks for listening. Welcome to the PR Maven Podcast, episode 235, presented by Marshall Communications, which is the creator of the 65-step Marshall Plan strategic process. For those of you who are new to the show, I'm your host, Nancy Marshall, the PR Maven and CEO of Marshall Communications. I want to welcome you, and I want to welcome my special guest, Kris Kelso. Kris, it's so nice to have you here.
Hey, Nancy, it's good to see you again, and great to see such a bright, beautiful smile. I know that not all your listeners can see you, but I hope they can hear it in your voice because you got a huge grin on your face and it's so infectious.
Thank you, Kris. Well, it's because I just feel so blessed, like I am leading the life that I want to lead.
Yes.
and being able to talk to you, I'm in Portland, Maine, and you're in Nashville, Tennessee, and that we can, thanks to technology, have this conversation and share it with our audiences. It's just amazing.
Isn't it wonderful?
Yeah, it is. It is. So Kris Kelso is a professional speaker, a certified leadership coach, a two-time entrepreneur, and a mentor to leaders around the world. He's the author of Overcoming the Imposter. I have a copy right here that he sent to me, and he autographed it for me, which was very special. And it said, "Never stop exploring." And we'll get into that too.
Yes.
So silence your inner critic and lead with confidence. And if you're like me, or if you are a human being, you know what it feels like to feel like you're an imposter. Like, who am I to tell others about public relations? Well, I know now because I've been thinking about it a lot. But when I first started coming out as the PR Maven, I sometimes was like, well, what gives me the right to be the PR Maven? And thanks to Kris, I've read the book and a lot of other work I've been doing. I don't feel that way anymore. So I just feel like I have a lot to share, and we'll talk about that. But Kris is also a faculty instructor at the Professional Christian Coaching Institute, an advisor instructor at the Nashville Entrepreneur Center, and a contributing writer for Fast Company magazine, a magazine that I really like, and
Yes.
Yahoo Finance and the Nashville Business Journal. He has unusually specific willpower, having not eaten a single donut in 17 years. That's good. It's funny. My mom, who we call Oma, she used to say, "Nancy, don't ever eat donuts," because she said, you might as well just tape them onto your rear end and walk around with them.
That's right.
Walk around with them hanging off. And actually just that image has helped keep me from eating donuts as well.
That's funny.
So Kris, tell us about your career so far and how you got into it in the first place, and why did you write your book?
Boy, well, we only have 45 minutes, so I'm going to have to tell the short version of my story. I've had a twisty-turny career, a short stint in the music industry, which is what brought me to Nashville to begin with in the mid-90s. And then I pivoted to a technology career. I was a software developer about 25 years ago or so. Did a lot in healthcare with technology. Eventually started my own company, an IT consulting firm. ran and grew that company for a number of years, then co-founded a second company, which was also a tech-based company, a technology platform built for the healthcare industry. And then for the last 6 or 7 years, I've been working independently as a leadership coach and as a consultant to leadership teams of mostly small to medium-sized businesses, and as a professional speaker, as you know, as we met through Heroic Public Speaking and some of the programs and training that we've done together. And then I authored a book, as you mentioned, that published about a little over 2 years ago.
Yeah, overcoming the imposter. Yeah, we'll talk about that. But I want to talk for a moment about Heroic Public Speaking because that's where we met. And I'm curious, why did you go to Heroic Public Speaking?
Well, a number of years ago, I was thinking about my professional development, and I try every year to do something in the professional development vein, take a class, learn a skill, master something. And it struck me that I've spoken publicly in one form or another, really since I was a teenager. I've done that kind of thing, not usually for pay. I only started getting paid as a speaker 5 or 6 years ago, but it occurred to me a while back that I had never really invested in developing that skill. I had, like many people, I've read some books and I've watched some YouTube videos and I've tried to study speakers and see what works, but I hadn't really put a lot of time and effort into really sharpening that saw. And so I mentioned to a friend of mine, Dave Delaney, that just in passing, I said, "Hey, I think, this year I think I'm going to try to do something to improve my public speaking." And he immediately said, "You need to meet my friend, Michael Port." And he made an introduction to Michael, who connected me with Amy Port, his wife and partner. And we talked about Heroic Public Speaking. And within a month or so, I think I was up in New Jersey. My wife came with me as well, and we went through their first 2-day program, and I was absolutely sold. They are, I can confidently say, one of the best in the world, if not the best in the world at what they do. And I learned so much about public speaking, but I also just really learned a lot about a well-run business and providing a great customer experience. So I came away from that not just with great public speaking skills, but a lot of other inspiration around my business as well. And so it was really impressive. And I have been back a number of times, including most recently over a few months earlier this year, where I got to know you, Nancy, and that was really fun for us to practice together and experiment together on trying to continue to improve these skills. It's been a joy.
Yeah, well, I always think of a brand in terms of the brand community or the brand audience. Like we have PR Maven Nation. And actually right now we've got Sixia and Lisa who are joining us live there. And
a couple of our HPS cohort members.
Right. Thanks
Good to see both of you.
LinkedIn Live, I can see that you're both there. And I'm so grateful to the Heroic Public Speaking community, that I never even thought about the people that I would meet by going there. And not only are they inspirational speakers, but they're just such amazing humans.
Yeah.
And I feel like that they talk about changing lives one speech at a time, but I feel like it changed my life just going through the program. And it's not only inspirational, but it helps build your confidence and it helps you cement your thoughts. I mean, they teach you this creative process where you're, playing with Post-it notes and markers. And I did that for months. Between September and December, we were developing our speech, and it was just wonderful. And I'm so grateful to have met you, Kris. So
yes, likewise.
I learned a lot about the imposter syndrome. So why don't you explain what that is?
Yeah, imposter syndrome is a psychological term that was coined back in the 1970s, actually. So it's not a new term per se, but it refers to the tendency of many people, more than a majority of the population, to really undervalue their success or even doubt the reality of their success. And we tend to overvalue other people's accomplishments and sort of discount or question the validity of our own accomplishments. And so when you have imposter syndrome, you look at someone like Nancy Marshall and you say, well, she has got a great business and she has this awesome podcast and she has written a book and she knows what she's doing. She's got a plan and she executes it well. And that's because she's smart and savvy and she makes great decisions. But, my success has been, there's been a lot of luck involved and some timing, and maybe some people have helped me along the way. And there've been a lot of times I didn't know what I was doing and I just sort of figured out my way through it. And the underlying fear is maybe I'm not legit. Maybe I'm a fraud. And oh my goodness, I sure hope nobody ever figures that out. That sooner or later I'm going to be discovered. People are going to realize that I really don't know what I'm doing. I'm just making it up as I go. And that if that happens, it's going to be my undoing. And my career or my credibility is all going to come crumbling to the ground. And of course, that's an unfounded fear. It's an exaggeration in our minds of the difference between us and someone else, because the truth is all of our stories involve some luck and some timing. And all of us, to some degree, are just figuring it out as we go. And in fact, most high achievers are more experimental, more exploratory than they are just brilliant and making all the right moves and executing flawlessly. So it's this real perception gap between what we see in others and the value we place on others' success and what we see in ourselves and what we assume that everyone else sees in us.
Right, exactly. And I think that sometimes we take our gifts for granted,
Yes.
I don't think I ever really valued my, I have a really extroverted personality, and it took until I was like almost in my 50s to say, oh, wow, not everybody has this kind of personality, and maybe it is a gift. And I was criticized so much for being like too much. And so I always had to tamp it down. So I think the key to a successful and happy life is actually kind of like paying attention to your own gifts and feeling grateful for them, and then manifesting those gifts in your life. And that is, I think, maybe part of the imposter syndrome too. But I want you to talk more about the explorer versus tour guide, because again, when you autographed my book, you said never stop exploring.
Yes.
And you just referred to that. So
the tour guide and the explorer are two personas that I have recognized in a lot of people. These two mindsets, really. And I'm a big fan of Carol Dweck and her book Mindset and a lot of her research on mindsets. And so this is sort of my analogy to explain that mindset difference is tour guides are people who act like a leader, but they're really only willing to take people where they've been before and where they're very comfortable and very familiar. And so they put tight boundaries around their comfort zone, and they follow a script. They don't ask questions, they answer questions. They like to be the most knowledgeable person in the room. They like to be the expert, and they're afraid to get out of that comfort zone. They're afraid of the unknown territory where suddenly they may not know as much as everybody else. Right. And they may not have all the answers. And so the tour guide deals with imposter syndrome by avoiding it, by staying out of any situation where their confidence is threatened. And they put boundaries around that comfort zone, and they just make that same loop over and over again, being the expert, and their confidence is built in what they know. The explorer is the other side of that. An explorer doesn't avoid imposter syndrome, doesn't avoid their inner critic. They disarm it. And the way they disarm it is by thinking differently about success and failure, and primarily thinking about failure as learning, and about and thinking of experimenting and figuring things out on the fly as a valuable skill rather than as a sign of weakness. And so an explorer likes to get into unknown territory. An explorer likes to have other experts around them. An explorer likes to try things even when they don't work out, because they realize they learned something. They see failure as learning, and learning is the path to success. So they're willing to experiment. They're willing to hit a dead end and turn around, because that's all part of the learning and the exploring process. And so that's why I say, and I write often in my books when I sign them, I write never stop exploring, because I believe that if you're a lifelong learner, then it's much more difficult for imposter syndrome to hold you back. Because imposter syndrome, to some degree, is the fear of failure and the fear of public failure. The fear that if you make a mistake or you do something wrong, it's going to expose you as inadequate or as a fraud. And that fear will hold you back. It'll keep you really conservative, really safe, and prevent you from taking the risks that are going to lead to the big opportunities.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And as you're talking, I'm thinking about the parallel with digital advertising, believe it or not. Like with digital advertising, you have to spend money to learn who's going to click on your ad.
Yes.
Like, you know, and if you don't spend enough, if you don't invest, and it's not an expense, it's actually an investment. If you don't invest in that, you're not going to figure out who the audience is for your product or service online. And it's almost like that in the real world. Like you need to kind of test, like what resonates with my messages. And it goes back to like figuring out what is your superpower and who's going to be attracted to that. And that's part of building a personal brand is, you know, you attract the right people into your universe, and actually you repel people who just aren't attracted to your brand. So that whole thing of exploring, it does resonate with me. And I love travel and I love being outdoors. So it's great.
Yeah. Digital marketing is such a great example of that, because you have to make small bets. You have to try things. You have to experiment and then see what works before you make bigger bets.
Right.
And so you learn your way, and a lot of that learning comes through failure. Like when you make those small bets, you lose more than you win. You have more failures than successes, but that's the only way to figure out where you want to actually invest your dollars and how to reach the right market. So digital marketing, if done well, is a great example of that exploratory mindset.
Right. Because sometimes if you only spend $10, you're not going to have enough of an audience to really test and learn. But sometimes you have to spend $1,000. And again, it's not an expense. It's an investment, because it's going to help you figure out the avatars or the targets. So anyway.
So one of the mantras that I've developed in that vein, as I've learned to reframe failure as learning, is that whenever I try anything, and this really applies for digital marketing and those little bets, whenever I try something for the first time, there's only two outcomes that I'm going to get. I'm either going to succeed or I'm going to learn.
Right.
It's one of those two. And either one is a net gain. It's a net win. So if I make an investment or I experiment with something, I try to go down a path and it doesn't get me what I want, then the question is, what learning can I take away from that that's going to help me be better on the next try? And that's still a step towards success, even when it feels like a quote failure.
Right. Yeah. And I love the fact that in your book, you give a lot of case studies of people, well-known people, who didn't actually succeed until they were later in life because they were testing and learning throughout their career.
Yeah, we don't often hear those failure stories.
Right.
We don't hear all of the run-up. One of my other favorite sayings, I wish I could remember who originally said this, but I heard someone say, it takes a long time to become an overnight success.
Yeah.
And it's absolutely true, because you can fail, learn, and then succeed. And people say, wow, you came out of nowhere. You were a rocket ship. You had this great success. And usually when you dig into those stories, it's nope, it was failure, learning, step forward, step backwards, sideways, here, there, and then all of a sudden, boom, something took off. One of those experiments really paid off, and all the culmination of that learning is what became the rocket fuel that made it look like an overnight success.
Oh yeah, Rocket Fuel. That's the name of a book by Mike Michalowicz.
Yes.
Yes, and that Mike Michalowicz is the author of Traction, which my company does follow his process. So I'm glad you used that term, rocket fuel.
Yes.
So PR professionals are constantly advising and counseling executives and business leaders. Some of them feel like imposters. How can someone overcome those feelings of being an imposter?
Well, we've talked about one aspect, which is to reframe failure as learning and to realize that experimenting is an important part of the process and you're not always going to get it right. And I think it's important to be open and honest about that, especially when you're taking on clients, when you're teaching, when you're taking people through a process like PR or advertising, marketing, something like that. If you present yourself and sell yourself as hire me because I have all the answers and I know exactly how to do it right, you're setting yourself up for imposter syndrome. You're setting yourself up for failure in your client's eyes and inadequacy in your own eyes. But if you sell yourself as I know how to do the experiments to figure out what's going to work, and I know how to take the culmination of all of my learnings up to this point and apply them to your situation, well, now you're selling that explorer approach. You're selling the setbacks are how we get to the success. And I'm okay with those. And you should too, client. You should understand. Now, we're not going to burn through all your money and waste it, but we're going to have this exploratory mindset. And I promise you that every time we, quote, fail, we're going to learn something that steps us to the next success. And so that mindset shift and even how you sell and present yourself can be a big factor in helping you to overcome that imposter syndrome. And the other one that I think is important, and this ties back to the explorer versus the tour guide. The tour guide gets their confidence from what they know. And so their confidence has limits on it because it's only based on what they can know. The explorer gets their confidence from the ability to learn. The explorer's confidence is not,
Right.
I know the answer. It's, I believe I can figure out the answer.
Right.
And so if you build your confidence on your ability to learn, adapt, experiment, shift, to turn failure into success through that learning process, well, now your confidence can be unlimited. Your confidence doesn't have boundaries on it. Your confidence is, I can go in whatever direction I decide to apply my learning engine to. I can go in whatever direction interests me or whatever direction that my clients and I agree on because I'm going to learn my way to that success. I don't have to have all the answers to feel confident that we can find our way to success.
Yeah, when you're saying this, we have our Marshall Plan process for developing a marketing and communication strategy, and we call it a highly collaborative process. We don't come in and say we have all the answers. We actually do a lot of discovery and a lot of listening because the clients actually have a lot of the answers themselves. And it's a matter of taking what they know about their own company or product or organization combined with our experience with a variety of different clients and putting it all together to come up with a strategy and tactics and goals and avatars or personas. So, I think a lot of the key to being successful is being able to listen and not be the one that's talking all the time.
Yeah.
But listen, and clients want somebody who is a good listener, not somebody who's coming in saying, I know everything. I am the expert.
Right. Yeah. And what I hear you saying is rather than selling a playbook, you have a framework to build a playbook.
Exactly.
And you're going to build that playbook for each client. It's going to be theirs
Totally,
rather than
that's
saying,
fine.
I'm going to take every client through the same process and do all the same things we've done over and over again. That's the difference between a tour guide that just runs the same script over and over and over, day in and day out, and an explorer that is using the culmination of everything they learn every day to apply to the next challenge.
Exactly. Thanks for that, Kris. We're going to take a brief break now. I want to remind you that you can go to prmaven.com/giveaway and submit your mailing information, and we'll mail you a things to do pad from the PR Maven. So that's kind of an old fashioned thing we do. We send out these pads in the mail that people who like to write lists. And I know a lot of our listeners love those things to do lists. So we're going to hear from our friends at Sprague and Curtis Real Estate right now, and then be back with more from Kris Kelso.
Sprague & Curtis is a locally owned real estate company. We're primarily focused in central Maine. I got excited about Nancy's book because she's so well known in the area for her marketing and branding techniques, and we're always looking to expand and learn and grow. And so a lot of us here at the office decided that we wanted to read her book and learn some new techniques.
It benefits Sprague & Curtis to have a large brand and audience because there can often be multiple years between transactions with clients. So it's important to network with them and stay in touch with them in those in-between periods. And this book really helped us learn some techniques and methods to continue to do that. We organized a small book group with Nancy's book with brokers in our office this winter to share information and remind ourselves how important it is to always be working on our network and continually reaching out to our customers.
Platforms like social media are important in expanding your business, but equally as important are handwritten notes, cards, letters. She inspired me to send her a note of appreciation, just thanking her for the book and her insight. In reading Nancy's book, I was excited to look to continue to grow our brand and our audience. I think she does a great job of motivating us.
Nancy's book really helped me learn a few things in marketing and branding and how important it is to stay on top of reaching out to clients periodically, staying top of mind, providing useful information, and really telling our story as a company.
So that's a good segue to talk about your book, Kris. Kris, you wrote Overcoming the Imposter 2 years ago, was it?
Yeah, I wrote it, I guess, about 2.5 years. It was published in January of 21.
Yeah, so you probably started it during the pandemic.
Yes, I did. I made good use of that downtime. I wrote the majority of it in the summer of 2020.
That's what I did too. That was a really good time for writing books. Not that I wish we would have another pandemic, but
No.
There was a lot of downtime. So did you write this book yourself, or did you use a ghostwriter?
I wrote it myself, and I actually considered hiring a ghostwriter because, honestly, a little bit of imposter syndrome. I didn't think I could write a book that would be good enough that I wanted my name on the cover. I'm a bit of a perfectionist.
Kind of ironic.
I have high standards, and I interviewed a ghostwriter, a very successful ghostwriter named Matt Litton, and he helped me put the outline together for my book. I kind of did a brain dump on him, and he's written multiple #1 bestsellers and sold millions of books that he has written or ghostwritten, and he was really, really instrumental in helping me take all of my ideas and categorize them and organize them in a way that would flow in a book. And by the end of that process, just building the outline, it was Matt who said to me, "Kris, I don't think you need a ghostwriter. You can write this book. And if you want, I can coach you through it." And so I retained him as a writing coach, but I ended up writing the book, and I'm really very gratified and very proud of the fact that I actually wrote it myself. I think I might struggle a little bit with imposter syndrome if I was selling a book about imposter syndrome that I didn't actually write. So nothing against anyone who hires a ghostwriter. Lots of people do that, and if writing's not your skill, I think it's wise to get someone who's a good writer to help, put your ideas to paper. But I'm really thrilled with how this book turned out and proud of the fact that I did write it myself.
Yeah, and I mean, authority marketing and thought leadership are so important, especially in merging both in-person appearances and how you show up online if someone Googles your name. So, do you want to talk about how this book has helped to establish you as an authority?
Oh my goodness. It has really been transformational to have published this book. I didn't write it just for the purpose of having a book or being an author or, to try to create some credibility. I honestly wrote it because it was a book that needed to be written. Like I looked for this book and couldn't find it. Yeah. And I felt like at some point it became a burden, a compulsion that I've got to write this book because it needs to exist. And so I wrote it first for myself, for the journey that I had been on, and for my clients and people that I knew that were wrestling with imposter syndrome. But the net result is it's a really valuable and powerful book, and it has created credibility and established some authority for me, and it has opened up a lot of doors. I've been able to speak on this topic around the world. I have been able to run programs on several continents, and I'm building an online course right now that's in the works that'll come out later this year. And I've been able to speak to audiences that I probably never would have had access to in the past. And but more importantly, I've been able to see the impact that it's had on people, and it's been so gratifying. Nancy, I've had people send me photos of their teenage children reading my book and thank me for helping them build their confidence. And it nearly brings a tear to my eye. I get choked up when I think about helping the next generation like that. So it's been immensely gratifying seeing the impact of it.
That's great. It must be really a good feeling to see that you're having impact worldwide, as you said. It's amazing. So how have you promoted the book? Have you had a PR plan for your book?
This is an interesting question because I did have some help. So my publisher, Dexterity Books, who I will rave about, they've been fantastic. As a part of the launch plan, they retained a PR firm for several months and helped me with some social media and things like that to really get the thing going. And that was incredibly helpful. Got me into some publications, got me some initial podcast interviews, and really got the ball rolling. And then referrals sort of kicked in and took over from there. So for the last 18 to 24 months, I haven't had a PR firm or an active person trying to place me places. And yet I'm doing several podcasts and live streams like this every month, almost to the point that I have to put some limits on how many, because once you get a message out there and it has an impact, there's referrals and recommendations that come around. And so I schedule them as I can. I'm probably this year going to hire an assistant of some kind, a virtual assistant, to help manage my schedule just because of that kind of activity.
Yeah. Well, it's what I call the snowball effect, and not because I come out of the ski business, but I did come out of the ski business, and there is a snowball effect with PR. Like the more you get, the more you get, the more you get, and the snowball gets bigger.
Yeah. And sometimes it's funny because you don't notice it at first. It's slow building. Yeah. But then you get this momentum and you say, oh my goodness, where is all this stuff coming from? And sometimes it's, some referrals take a year or two to pan out. Right. Sometimes, I've had people call me and say, I heard you speak at this, just the other day, I was at an event and somebody said, I heard you speak 5 years ago, because I started talking about imposter syndrome before I wrote the book. And so I had spoken at it was one of the very first conferences I spoke on imposter syndrome. And he said, I heard you speak, and those principles still rattle around in my head. I think about them often, and you have really, really helped me. And that just blew me away because I barely remembered that event, but he certainly did. It had an impact on him.
Yeah, that's great. And actually having a book and speaking. So sometimes people will read your book, then hear you speak, or vice versa. They'll hear you speak, be inspired to read your book. But either way, you can have a profound impact. And sometimes you're having an impact on people and you don't even realize it.
Yes.
I love that. So, Kris, what is a book, a podcast, or an app that has helped you in your career and your life, and why?
I have another book, and I've got a copy of it right here. I'll hold it for the viewers, but I know some are listening to this by audio. It's called DIY Brain by Dr. Roger Hall. Dr. Hall is a PhD psychologist, and he has studied a lot of brain science. And this book is sort of a blend of the science of how your brain works with a lot of really entertaining and sticky, fun concepts on how to leverage the way that your brain works. So he talks about things like stress management and memorization. In fact, he has this concept he calls mental monkeys, which itself is a mental monkey. And it means a concept or an idea that is so catchy because it either has a great analogy or some kind of imagery with it that it sticks in your head. And so he paints the image of a monkey kind of bouncing around in your head, this thing that you just can't forget. And so he has a whole series of these mental monkeys that he helps you to remember, but it's things that will help you in stressful situations figure out what's going on and notice the stress and know how to manage it. How to have better memory and thought processes, how to change your thought patterns. So it's really, really valuable. It's not specifically about business or about, one particular domain in life. It's really kind of a set of mental hacks that you can apply to a lot of areas of your life. So highly recommended. I enjoyed it. I laughed. I cried. I mean, it was one of those that it's a sort of a sciencey book, and yet it was really fun and emotional and entertaining in the same way. So it's a great blend for left brain and right brain people.
I need that. I have a lot of monkeys living in my head.
Well, you want to feed the right ones and trap and kill off the bad ones. So yeah, this is a great book.
I feel sorry for those monkeys.
You're running your own zoo.
Kris, how can people order your book and get in touch with you?
Yeah, I'm first of all, I'm easy to find online if you remember that my name starts with a K, Kris Kelso. And you can find me with that handle on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, a lot of the socials, Instagram. And my website is kriskelso.com, or specifically, if you're looking for the book, it's overcomingtheimposter.com. And there's information there on the book, on my keynote speech on the topic that I've been giving to conferences and universities and private companies all over the place, and also information there on the digital course that's about to be released.
Oh, I'm so excited about that. And yes, I know that your speech talks about the Thompson principle, and I'm not going to give away what is the Thompson, but having heard your speech, I know that the Thompson principle ties in with the imposter syndrome. So I did learn something from you.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Kris, this has been a lot of fun. I've really enjoyed talking to you, and I want to thank you for sharing your thoughts on the imposter syndrome with me and with the world.
Absolutely, Nancy. This has been so much fun. It's great to see you again, and I hope our paths will continue to cross.
I know they will, because there's a certain magnetism in our HBS group. So
yes,
I know we'll all be together. So thanks, Kris, and I hope you have a great day, and I hope everyone in PR Maven Nation has a great day as well.
Likewise. Thanks.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the PR Maven Podcast. I invite you to share a review of the podcast on iTunes or your favorite podcast player. Be sure to subscribe to our podcast so you never miss an episode. You can also join the PR Maven Nation on Facebook. It's free to join, and it's a great community of like-minded individuals who are all looking to learn and grow from one another. If you use an Alexa device, use your Alexa app to search the skills and games section to find and enable the PR Maven Podcast Flash Briefing. This will give you access to exclusive content and more PR and marketing advice. Thanks again for listening, and have a great rest of your week, PR Maven Nation.